Chapter 81. Witness the Destruction of a World. Don't stare, the brawny man suddenly warned. Shinji snapped his eyes away. For a moment, he'd felt his mind being dragged toward the darkness beyond the heavens, an almost irresistible urge to look. The man took another drag of his cigar. Don't worry too much. Before this world dies, it won't be able to harm you or yours. Shinji, still shaken, asked, What is it? A world-eating monster. Some call it an overlord, some a catastrophe, some the apocalypse. The brawny man glanced up at the sky, then quickly looked away. Shinji's face tightened. It feeds on worlds. Even the names, Overlord, Catastrophe, Apocalypse, conjured something terrifying. He could hardly believe such a thing could exist. After forcing himself calm, Shinji asked, Why was this world chosen? Bad luck, I guess. The man exhaled a cloud of smoke. Anyone can get caught. It's just a matter of time. Is there nothing to stop it? Shinji pressed. The man smiled at him. Maybe. I don't know. Shinji scanned the devastated landscape. What about this world's lantern bearer? Why didn't he fight back? You mean that fool? The man scooped himself down onto a charred boulder. He fought, but he fought stupidly. Stupidly? How else could you call him a fool? The man laughed. He knew he couldn't stop the Overlord with his own strength, so he spread word of the Overlord and the coming apocalypse across the world. He tried to rally everyone. And then? Shinji had thought that desperate, last-ditch effort more noble than foolish. They all united and built 3 defense systems. And, Shinji urged. The brawny man shrugged. Did you see the result? The contamination spreading let the Overlord lock onto this planet much faster. It could have lingered for decades, maybe a century, but because of that fool, the apocalypse came early. Shinji fell silent. The picture became clear. This world had been unlucky enough to be targeted. Its lantern-bearer refused to wait for a slow death and broadcast the danger to rally the world. Instead of saving them, the spread of contamination made it easier for the Overlord to find them. The unity the lantern-bearer tried to forge was admirable, but the consequence was fatal. Shinji also began to understand why Light had marked this world as a safe zone. Because the world was set to be destroyed, it would no longer be anchored to other worlds. Contamination wouldn't spread beyond it, so lantern-bearers from elsewhere could temporarily descend here to trade or swap information without endangering others. A sudden, thunderous crack tore the air. Shinji looked up as pieces of the firmament collapsed and the darkness from beyond the heavens rushed in. The 7 lantern-bearers in black robes who had been trading wrapped up their dealings and vanished into the wasteland in flashes of lamplight. The brawny man, cigar clenched between his teeth, said flatly, It's almost over. Shinji never expected his first intrusion to witness a world's end. He watched the sky fall, the ground split, everything around him disintegrate, and felt a shock that left him wordless. The brawny man nudged him. You should leave, newbie. Shinji knew he had to. He could feel the malice in the encroaching darkness, an instinctive fear crawling under his skin. He was far too weak to face it. He stepped back and brought out his light from the red cloud cloak. Though the brawny man hadn't shown malice and had answered many of his questions, Shinji didn't drop his guard. As light began to glow around him, he kept a wary eye on the man. The brawny man ignored him and watched the sky. One by one, the other lantern-bearers had departed. Now, only Shinji and the brawny man remained on the broken plane. Shinji couldn't help asking, Aren't you leaving? The man turned to him. Do you remember the fool I mentioned? You mean the lantern-bearer of this world? Shinji asked. The man nodded, then laughed at Shinji. Ha ha, I'm that fool. Shinji froze. The lantern-bearer of this world sat before him, and he just confessed it casually. Then Shinji noticed the last ember in the man's lamp pot was nearly dead. He lowered his gaze to his own lamp. If the ember burns out, does the world lose its protection? A chill ran through him. He suddenly understood the ember's importance. While even a speck of it remained, the world could hold off an overlord. But once it was gone, he glanced back at the sky. The darkness was already seeping in. The brawny man waved him off. Get out of here. This is my tomb. It'll be crowded with one more. After hearing the man's confession, Shinji let his posture relax. Opportunities like this were rare. Is there really no way to fight the Overlord? He asked before he left. The man looked surprised that Shinji asked, then said, There are rumors powerful lantern bearers beat overlords, but they're mostly nonsense. As light wrapped Shinji, he asked one more thing, voice strained. If lantern bearers kept coming into my world and refused to communicate, do you know why? The brawny man's mouth curved into a scornful smile. Ah, that world was probably targeted by the Overlord too. Chapter 82. Walk My Own Path. Inside the apartment, Shinji drew a long, shaky breath. His face still wore the imprint of shock. Only moments ago he had watched a world be destroyed, no, devoured, by the Overlord. A monster that fed on worlds. Even the memory made his skin crawl. He felt unsteady, as if some of that corruption might already have lodged in him. PTSD-like panic clung to his chest. It took a long time before his thoughts slowed enough to breathe normally. He peeled off his mask and the red cloud cloak and discovered his back was soaked with sweat. He took a cold shower, then returned to the bedroom. Moonlight spilled in through the window like a thin sheet of silver, laying itself across the bed. He sank under it and let the quiet of the room settle him. Only now did the reality of the world's destruction recede enough to let his mind start working again instead of being paralyzed by fear. He focused on the burly man's last words. The lantern bearer from the Demon Slayer world had been invading the ninja world to anchor it because the Demon Slayer world was targeted by the Overlord. Suddenly, everything fit. The burly man had mobilized his entire world to resist the Overlord, fighting it to the death. The lantern bearer had chosen a darker path, anchoring other worlds so the Overlord would pursue them instead. Shinji couldn't tell whether the lantern bearer intended to drag the ninja world into the Overlord's jaws alongside his own, or to replace his own world entirely with the ninja world as the Overlord's meal. Either way, the Demon Slayer lantern bearer was trying to shift the Overlord's calamity onto the ninja world. Anger flared. The thought of his world being consumed filled him with despair and fury. What could he do? He had seen the Overlord's power firsthand. Before it, he felt as insignificant as an ant. He couldn't imagine fighting it, yet a rumor the burly man had mentioned nagged at him. The burly man dismissed it, but Shinji had a hunch it might be true, that a powerful lantern bearer had once defeated an Overlord. Thinking back on his conversation with the burly man, Shinji realized he'd absorbed more than he'd noticed at the time. His instincts had told him the burly man wasn't a true threat. He'd listened and talked rather than shutting him out. That implied lantern bearers' strength varied from world to world. In some realms, lantern bearers topped out at the level native to that world. In others, especially those with exceptional fundamentals, a lantern bearer could reach far greater heights. The ninja world was special. With chakra and natural energy as its foundations, the ceiling for extraordinary power here was much higher than in ordinary worlds. If Shinji could rise to the peak the ninja world offered, if he could reach the realm of bloodline encirclement, he might be able to do things even an Overlord could do. Traverse the universe with a physical body, absorb planetary energy. It wouldn't guarantee victory, but it would let him fight back. His lamp and its ember were a limiting factor. Ember was both the source of lamp abilities and a trading currency among lantern bearers. It was also the last line of defense for a world. His own lamp's ember had only filled about 1/5 of its capacity, too shallow to spend recklessly on trades with other lantern bearers. But he still had ember. That bought him time. Maybe not decades, but perhaps 8 or 10 years. Long enough to grow. He counted his assets. Between his own and the others he'd acquired, he now had 4 Mangekyo in various states. Excluding the unusable ones, he might be able to aim for Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. If he could restore the 2 partially damaged and the 1 fully damaged Mangekyo, assemble 2 pairs of Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, and then use the Susanoo lamp to merge them, the resulting Eternal Mangekyo would be an ultimate dojutsu, potentially even challenging the Rinnegan. With a pair of Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan wielding ultimate yin chakra, the risks of transplanting white Zetsu cells or first-generation cells would be far lower. The experiences of Madara, Obito, and others suggested the Sharingan could counterbalance first-generation cells through a yin-yang chakra balance. The more and stronger the yin chakra, the better the chance of surviving such transplants. If he gained the Rinnegan, or equivalent power, He could choose Madara and Obito's path of gathering tailed beasts and reviving the Ten Tails, or find another way. Bloodline encirclement would no longer be a dream out of reach. A hard, steady resolve filled him. The burly man had chosen total war. The Demon Slayer Lantern Bearer had chosen to spread the calamity. Shinji would choose a third path. He would not hand his world over to an overlord, nor betray it to save himself. He would save it in his own way. He pushed the blanket back and sat up, moonlight catching the tired determination in his eyes. There was time to grow. He'd use it to walk his own path. Chapter 83, Gentle Person. Shinji gathered his negative emotions and made a sober plan. If he wanted to climb to the top, he had to stop staring at the summit and focus on the ground beneath his feet. The path had to be walked one step at a time, and each step had to be steady. Karin. He immediately thought of Karin. She was the key. Whether the partially or entirely damaged Mangekyo Sharingan could be restored depended on her. Before anything else, Shinji had to accomplish one task. He bit his finger, formed hand signs, and released a summoning jutsu. A puff of white smoke and Coal Ball appeared. The little creature licked his fur and asked, "What are we stealing this time?" Shinji froze. Coal Ball sighed like a cat. "Not stealing? Then you want me to spy on someone. Ugh, another exhausting job." "It's different this time," Shinji said, a little embarrassed. Coal Ball cocked his head. Shinji explained, "I need to go to the Grass Ninja Village, but I can't go openly. I need you to go there first and then reverse summon me." "Grass Ninja Village? That's abroad, isn't it?" Coal Ball hesitated. Shinji frowned. "What's wrong? You don't know the way?" "How could I not?" Coal Ball patted his chest. "Don't worry, leave it to me." Shinji felt a flicker of doubt about entrusting the mission to Coal Ball, but he had no better option. Even at Coal Ball's speed, reaching the vicinity of the Grass Village would take at least a week if nothing went wrong. After agreeing on a rough timetable, Shinji released the contract and sent Coal Ball off to pack. Left alone, Shinji turned his thoughts back to the white Zetsu cells. The cells Deidara had been instructed to collect were safer than first-generation cells, but transplanting them still carried significant risk. To gain Karen's cooperation, he would first have to show sincerity. "Once I rescue Karen's mother and Deidara secures the white Zetsu cells, I can broach the subject of a transplant with Karen." Shinji expected Karen wouldn't refuse. First, the Uzumaki clan's powerful vitality and Karen's rare self-healing constitution meant the transplant would be far less dangerous for her than for most people. Second, it would greatly improve her. A successful transplant would grant her the combined strengths of the Uzumaki Sage Body, the Senju Sage Body, and traits of the Divine Tree. If she cultivated that potential fully, particularly by developing wood release, her Sage Body alone might rival that of Otsutsuki Asura, who inherited the Six-Path Sage Body directly. Shinji had also found a way to awaken that potential, training wood release. Wood release could activate the Divine Tree traits in her bloodline, and supporting wood release demanded a powerful Sage Body. In the process of learning wood release, Karen would naturally unearth the Sage Body power dormant in her blood. It was similar to how Shinji had used the Susanoo lamp to control others' eyes. The act of control itself served as chakra control training. That's why he had picked up medical ninjutsu so quickly. Constant chakra control practice had accelerated his progress. The weight of the day caught up with him. He'd sparred with Sasuke, intercepted an invasion, and watched a world be destroyed. Exhausted, he rolled over and fell into a deep sleep. The next morning, he arrived at the Ninja Academy yawning. After finishing the morning cultural classes, he hurried to the laboratory and assisted Inaho Kaoru with 2 surgeries. Whether from his precise chakra control or his unusually mature mental composure, the skill he displayed impressed the entire medical team. Even Inaho, who had been critical at first, beamed with pride and praised him. Shinji remained grounded. In medical ninjutsu, he was still a beginner, far from a Tsunade-level expert, and even behind many experienced medical nin. He didn't let the praise blind him. Instead, he absorbed everything the medical team could teach. That evening, he strolled to his usual training ground. Before he even entered, the clash of metal reached his ears, loud and intense. He pushed open the gate and found Haku and Karen sparring inside. They froze when they saw him. Haku stepped forward. "Shinji, Karen and I just happened to meet. Karen nodded and moved as if to leave. They treated the place like it was Shinji's private training ground. Embarrassed, one explained while the other tried to slip away. Shinji watched them, amused. "You look even more guilty by running," he called out as Karen hesitated at the edge of the ring. She stopped, then turned back. Shinji examined her closely. Wearing dark goggles at night was odd, but ninjas were full of quirks. Some wore masks their whole lives. A small pouch hung at her waist. Inside was probably the trophy taken from the drum demon. Haku, worried Shinji might notice something, quickly said, "Shinji, let's spar." Shinji didn't move to fight. Instead, he said, "Why do you run when I show up?" Karen started. "Stay," Shinji said, tossing the single word lightly into the air. He then strode to the center of the training ground. Haku looked at Karen and smiled. "Shinji's actually a very gentle person. Stay." Shinji's gesture, allowing Karen to remain, meant he tacitly approved of her joining his small circle. Given his new reputation as a genius at the academy, being included in his group wasn't trivial, especially for a reserved student like Karen. Shinji tossed his jacket onto a nearby bench, turned to Haku, and said, "Enough talk. Let's begin." Haku grinned. "Coming." Chapter 84. Just you? Bang, bang, bang. Fists and feet collided in rapid succession, the sounds echoing through the secluded training ground. Knowing White's background, Shinji held nothing back in their spar. Still, he couldn't break through White's taijutsu defense. After a long while, the two ended in a draw. Shinji panted to himself. White was already strong, and after absorbing several spoils of war, his power had clearly increased. Without using his Mangekyo Sharingan, Shinji definitely wouldn't have been White's match. After a short rest, Shinji looked toward Karen standing at the edge of the field. "You, spar with me." Karen blinked as if in disbelief, pointing at herself. "Me. Hurry up," Shinji said, waving her over. He had already been thinking about how to keep Karen close so he could monitor the recovery of the half-damaged Mangekyo Sharingan in her eyes at all times. Karen was his main investment now. He cared for her even more than for himself. When she stepped onto the field, he asked casually, "How's your taijutsu?" "Terrible," Karen answered quickly. In class, her taijutsu had been average for her age, but compared to Shinji, it was definitely inferior. Shinji's expression sharpened, and he suddenly lunged forward. Karen dodged and parried in a panic. After a few clashes, he noticed that her reaction speed wasn't slow, but she hesitated constantly between attacking and retreating, making her movements sluggish. That was a typical sign of lacking confidence. He had made the same mistake when he first sparred with White, and only overcame it after gaining confidence. Shinji deliberately attacked from Karen's blind side and found her reaction there significantly slower, so he stopped. As he'd suspected, Karen's sage body alone wasn't enough to restore the half-damaged Mangekyo. It could only nourish the Sharingan and prevent further deterioration. Stepping back, he said, "Don't neglect taijutsu. It trains combat intuition and sharpens your courage." Karen nodded blankly. Just then, Sasuke appeared in the training ground, hands in his pockets. "I figured you'd be here," he said to Shinji. "What do you want?" Shinji replied. Sasuke glanced at White and Karen, then back at Shinji. "Spar with me. With your strength, sparring with them won't help you grow at all." "Shinji, spar with me from now on." Shinji laughed. With White's current power, beating Sasuke wouldn't be a problem. Karen, though weaker, also had a Mangekyo Sharingan. Sasuke wasn't in a position to look down on either of them right now. "What are you laughing at?" Sasuke frowned. Shinji shrugged. "I've been focusing on medical ninjutsu lately. I probably don't have much time to spar. Find someone else." Sasuke looked displeased. White, remembering the mission the hidden mist had given him, quickly offered, "Sasuke, I can be your sparring partner." Sasuke glanced over White and dismissed him. "You? Forget it." Then he turned and left the training ground. Shinji continued sparring with White a while longer. After working up a sweat, he said goodbye to White and Karen and left alone. Once Shinji was gone, Karen exhaled in relief. "If you spend more time with him, you'll see he's actually easy to get along with," White said. Karen nodded. "I can tell. The way he looks at me is different. He doesn't treat me like an outsider." White agreed. Just as Shinji felt relaxed around White, White felt at ease with him. Karen looked wistful. "It's a pity we can't tell him who we really are." "Yeah, Sometimes I hoped Shinji could become one of us in Akatsuki, White admitted after a pause, then shook his head. But then I thought better of it. He's gone through enough already. Karen smoothed her expression and asked, curious, by the way, how's your absorption of the spoils of war coming along? White didn't answer with words. He extended his palm toward Karen, and without forming any hand signs, a water sphere appeared there. The sphere shifted shape continuously until it solidified into an ice blade that radiated cold. Wow, Karen exclaimed. White dispersed the blade and asked, what about you? Karen frowned. Fusing water and earth-nature transformations is too hard. I don't have any clue right now. White thought for a moment. Then I'll teach you water-nature first. Is it difficult? Karen asked. Not really, White replied. It's simple. Later, in his apartment, Shinji sat on his bed and activated Jibi. He carefully sensed the surroundings, then reluctantly released the eye technique. Within Jibi's range, he detected only White and Karen. That meant Deidara hadn't succeeded yet, or hadn't reached the town where they'd agreed to meet. It had only been a day since he'd given Deidara the mission, so that was not unusual. Deidara and Sasori worked as a team, and they didn't always have contact with Zetsu. A sharp throb pulsed from his eye sockets, and Shinji immediately covered them. It's happening more often. His expression darkened. His dojutsu was being drained little by little. That one-way consumption only made his anxiety worse. He knew stewing on it would do him no good, so he pushed his thoughts elsewhere. The sensing range of Jibi was still too limited. He wondered if Jibi's range would expand once he fused the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. He also regretted not knowing what Magatsu's true ability was. His thoughts turned to the Mangekyo in Karen's eyes. Like his grandmother Uchiha Chiri's Mangekyo, hers had lost one eye technique. The remaining technique was relatively useless to its original owner. For Chiri, the remaining technique was Susanoo, but with only one Mangekyo, it hadn't been practical to wield, so it had been effectively useless. For Shinji, the situation was different. If he could fuse a pair of eternal Mangekyo Sharingan and gain the Mangekyo that held Susanoo, his own Susanoo could reach an unimaginably great level of power. Chapter 85, Grass Ninja Village, third update. Over the next days, Shinji kept a steady routine. Mornings at the Ninja Academy, medical ninjutsu study at noon, evening sparring with Yuhi and Karen, and late at night, he returned home to activate Jibi and try to sense Deidara. His days were full and satisfying, but 9 days slipped by with no sign of Deidara. Tonight, after activating Jibi once more and feeling nothing, he was about to turn it off when he suddenly felt a summoning technique pulling at him. Coalball was reverse summoning him. He quickly formed the seals, made a shadow clone, and left it in the apartment, then let his true body respond to the summoning. A puff of white smoke, and Shinji appeared. Coalball hopped out beside him and looked at Shinji with a pathetic little face. Shinji scanned their surroundings. Why are you 2 days later than we agreed? Coalball complained, do you know how hard it is for a little cat to travel abroad? Look, my paws are all worn out. Shinji sighed. Consider it a work injury. The pitiful look vanished from Coalball's face. He jumped onto Shinji's shoulder and pointed ahead. Look quick, that's Grass Ninja Village. Shinji followed the gesture and finally saw Grass Ninja Village framed by the trees. Shinji, what are you going to steal there this time? Coalball teased. Shinji smacked the cat's head lightly. Don't be nosy. Hide in my shadow. We're moving. Coalball obediently sank into Shinji's shadow. Shinji melted into the night and crept toward the village. He'd done his homework. Though Grass was not one of the 5 great shinobi countries, it was still a respected force with a full recruitment and training system and could field several thousand ninja if mobilized. Even with his Mangekyo Sharingan, he couldn't just storm in. But he didn't need to. Lurking on the outskirts, he picked a target, a middle-aged shinobi wearing a grass forehead protector, returning from a mission. With a flicker, he blocked the man's path. Perhaps because he was so close to home, the man was relaxed. He only stared and asked, "Who are you?" Shinji locked eyes and activated his Mangekyo. The man's expression blanked. Shinji pulled him into the trees and began a genjutsu interrogation. The shinobi was Daisuke, a chunin escorting a merchant back to the village. From him, Shinji learned the layout of Grass Ninja Village. When he finished, Shinji knocked Daisuke out, bound him with rope, then used a transformation technique to assume his appearance. He took a kunai, nicked Daisuke's arm, and smeared the blood on himself to fake an injury. Satisfied, he moved toward the village. At the checkpoint, he called out casually, "Kuma, Shuji, you two on duty today." He used the information he'd just learned to sound familiar. The guards noticed the blood on him. "What happened? Ran into trouble on your mission?" Shinji shrugged. "Bad luck. Ran into a rogue ninja." "You're unlucky then. Go get patched up," the guard said, and let him through. Grass Ninja Village had grown lax, proud of its status as the strongest village outside the Five Great, but used to being left alone. Smaller forces rarely targeted it, and the Five Great relied on buffer states like Grass and Aim, so attacks were uncommon. That complacency worked in Shinji's favor. He moved through the village according to Daisuke's directions and stopped in front of a shabby shack. It didn't look like a place of special supervision, which surprised him. If Grass had sent Karen to Konoha as part of a secret plan, Karen's mother, who could be used as leverage, ought to be kept under strict watch. Still, he knocked. After a long pause, a weak voice called, "Please come in." The door opened to reveal a pale, haggard woman who bowed and said in a humble tone, "I'm sorry to have kept you waiting." Shinji stared. The woman stepped aside. "Please, come in." The shack was sparse. A bed, a table, a few battered boxes, and on the wall a set of children's clothes, tiny, immaculate, and oddly out of place among the ruin. They looked like they belonged to a 5- or 6-year-old. The woman extended one scarred arm and bowed her head. "Please allow me to heal your wounds." Seeing the scars on her arm, something clicked in Shinji's chest. The hair wasn't the bright red of the Whirlpool clan, but it was white threaded with faint red. And the battered arm told the truth. This was Karen's mother. Karen's miraculous healing constitution came from her mother. To see the woman so exhausted, looking like a shell before 30, made Shinji's mind race. He could only imagine how Grass Village had treated her. The woman watched him searchingly, then, thinking he couldn't find a place to bite to draw blood, she offered her other arm. Shinji looked for an unmarked spot but could only find more wounds. Terror crept into the woman's face. Shinji gripped her hand suddenly. "Don't be afraid." Her fear turned to confusion. "What are you saying?" "I'm taking you out of here." He took her hand and started for the door. She followed 2 steps, then wrenched free, rushed to the wall, took down the small clean clothes, and clutched them to her chest like a lifeline. Shinji stepped closer and said gently, "I'll take you to see her." Author's note: this is the 3rd update. This week is crucial. The last chance for this story to make Sanjang. Please support it. Don't hoard chapters. Give recommendation tickets, monthly tickets, and follow-up reads. Only by turning to the last page does a follow-up read count, so please keep reading. It took Shinji a long time to get the woman to calm down. Her body had been ravaged and her mind was frayed. Her only comfort was the bundle of clothes clutched to her chest, Karen's clothes. Shinji couldn't afford to push her too hard right now, or it might make things worse. Once her emotions had settled enough, he quietly activated his Mangekyo Sharingan and slipped her into a deep sleep. He sighed. In her current state, she wouldn't last until Karen returned to the Grass Village. That made the Grass Village's plan obvious. They never intended to treat Karen or her mother as their own. They would use the mother to coerce Karen into stealing the 9 tails, then extract the beast and dispose of Karen, the deserter Jinchuriki, without risking an open clash with Konoha. 2 outsiders sacrificed, 1 enormous prize gained. Shinji's fingers itched to activate Susanoo and tear the place apart, to scatter the insect-like villagers to the wind, but he knew the consequences could spiral out of control. If Karen's ties to the Grass Village were exposed, especially her past coercion into the plot to assassinate Naruto, Konoha would inevitably investigate. And Karen's mother wouldn't survive another upheaval. He needed a better plan. Make it look like an accident so the Grass Village would believe Karen's mother dead, letting her slip away unnoticed. A while later, there was a knock at the door. Shinji opened it and let a man in. "Daisuke, you're back from your mission?" the man called as he entered, glancing around. "Where's that woman?" Shinji's hand shot out and slammed into him. The man crashed through the wooden doorway and tumbled out of the house. Before he could get his bearings, Shinji pounced, straddling him and raining blows down. "You bastard! How dare you!" he shouted. The stunned grass ninja recovered enough to shove Shinji away. "Daisuke, are you crazy?" he roared. "You've gone too far." Shinji drew a kunai. The other man didn't hesitate either. He pulled his own blade from his pouch and met Shinji head-on. The clash drew a crowd, and the two began to fight for real. Nobody dared to break them up. Both men looked like they were out for blood. Then Shinji pulled a long string of exploding tags from his waist. "If I go down, I'm taking you with me," he snarled. The onlookers scattered in panic. The man's fury collapsed into confusion as he realized the Daisuke before him was not acting normally. "Stop," he began, but Shinji had already triggered the tags. Fire and blast light swallowed the man and several nearby houses in a cascade of explosions. From a tree on the ridge, Shinji watched the grass village burn, a faint curve to his lips. A village's own ninjas turning on each other. How fitting. He dropped to the ground and hurried back to where Karen's mother was leaning against a tree, sleeping, while Coldball worked on her wounds. "It's no use," Coldball said when he saw Shinji. "My medical ninjutsu isn't taking effect." Shinji studied the woman's gaunt face. "She's exhausted her reserves," he said. "Her yang chakra is special. Compared to hers, our yang is inferior. That's why we can't do much for her." Coldball clicked his tongue. Someone who'd been bleached by such an unusual yang chakra and pushed to this point, it made him grimly glad he was a cat. "Let's move," Shinji said. He hefted the unconscious woman into his arms. Earlier, to make the result seem inevitable, Shinji had sent a shadow clone to provoke trouble and detonate most of the exploding tags outside the cottage. He'd also silenced Daisuke, the Chunin he'd already bound, so there were witnesses to the fight and an overwhelming blast that destroyed physical clues. With the village's own indifference to Karen's mother, the scene would be written off as an internal conflict. That would let her slip away, officially dead, actually gone. They put distance between themselves and the grass village until they'd gone dozens of miles. On a lonely stretch of road, Shinji roused Karen's mother and entered her mind with genjutsu. She was weak, not just physically but mentally, so he decided to seal some of the worst memories to ease her pain. Using the Mangekyo Sharingan, he blocked most of her experiences in the grass village and wove in a false memory. In it, she and Karen had left the village together and met Jiraiya, who took Karen to Konoha so she could become a real shinobi. Afterward, he formed a few hand signs and created another shadow clone. His main body had to be back in the village before dawn, so the clone would escort Karen's mother to a safe town inside the Land of Fire and leave her there to live in peace. Fortunately, the woman's red Uzumaki hair had been altered. There was little danger anyone would recognize her. Shinji handed the woman to the shadow clone, gave the clone its orders, and prepared to vanish into the night. Chapter 87. Right and Wrong. Through the shadow clone he had left in the apartment, Shinji first summoned Coldball back to the apartment, then had Coldball perform a reverse summoning to pull his main body from the grass country back to the apartment as well. After returning, he dispelled the clone he'd left behind and gave Coldball instructions. "You help my shadow clone settle that woman," he said. "If anything unexpected happens, reverse summon me over. You can do that so long as my blood you're carrying hasn't dried." Coldball nodded. He was already familiar with the reverse summoning. Shinji had entrusted him with a vial of his blood in a small bag, and Coldball could pull him back from anywhere before it dried. After a few more quick directions, Shinji dismissed the summoning and sent Coldball back to the grass country. He glanced at the wall clock. It was still early. He activated GB and prepared to tell Karen the good news inside GB's projection space. As he reached out with perception, though, he noticed a third presence in addition to White and Karen. A thought flashed through him. Deidara had handled the White Zetsu cells? Joy warmed him. GB's sensing had picked up spiritual presences tied to White, Karen, and Deidara. The additional point had to be Deidara, who had come into GB's range. Despite his eagerness to get his hands on the White Zetsu cells, Shinji decided to connect with Karen first. Karen's spiritual projection soon formed over the round table. The moment she saw Shinji, her expression tightened. "My lord, I'm so sorry," she blurted. I still can't master the chakra nature transformation for water and earth. I can't use wood release. Karen's cautiousness made Shinji uneasy. After the fall of Uzushiogakure, how much had this mother and daughter endured as refugees? Karen could not see the expression beneath Shinji's mask. She read only disapproval and hurried to promise, "I will work harder, my lord." Shinji waved away the concern. "I called you for another reason." Karen sat and watched him. "I found your mother," he said calmly after a moment. "She's been rescued from the grass ninja village." Karen sprang to her feet. "Really? That's wonderful." Shinji didn't hide anything. "When I found her, she was in bad shape." "Is mother all right?" Karen's voice trembled. Her chakra was badly overdrawn. Her red hair had gone white, and her spirit is near collapse. He let the words hang. "The grass ninja never intended for her to survive. You should understand what that implies." Karen's fists clenched and tears slipped down her cheeks. "Did my mother and I do something wrong? Why would they treat us like this?" Shinji said nothing. Her question reminded him of a brutal vision he'd seen recently, an overlord devouring a world. Strength answers for itself, he thought, and he couldn't comfort her with a fair explanation. After a long pause, he added, "I staged an accident in the grass village. They'll believe your mother died in it and won't search for her, at least for now." Karen wiped her tears and asked carefully, "May I see mother?" Shinji nodded. "I'll arrange it." Relief flooded her features. Then she asked, "What should I do next?" "That depends on you," Shinji replied. "The grass village won't give up their plans easily. They'll use your mother to coerce you into working for them. If you try to run or show any sign that things weren't an accident, they'll realize the truth and come after both of you." Karen understood instantly. To secure a safe life for her mother, she had to play ignorant. Only by staying in their good graces would they be left alone. Shinji continued, "Your mother shielded you once, and the grass village accepted you because of her. Now you must shield her. As for right and wrong, when you grow strong enough, you can go to them and make them answer for what they did." Karen's tears dried. "I understand." Shinji felt he should be frank. "I've obtained a special cell that contains the chakra of the first Hokage, Senju Hashirama. If you can endure it, it will be a qualitative leap in your strength." Karen didn't hesitate. "I'm willing to be transplanted." Shinji interrupted. "I want to use this cell to enhance your sage body and to let your unusually pure yang nature chakra help restore the Mankyo Sharingan I previously transplanted into you. That's my goal. You will benefit greatly. Your power will reach unprecedented levels." He explained his reasoning. In purity, Karen and her mother's yang nature chakra was exceptional, capable of extraordinary healing in small amounts, but they both lacked quantity. Nagato of the Uzumaki had the opposite problem, abundant chakra, but lower purity. Hashirama's chakra, however, combined both quality and quantity. If Karen could tolerate the white Zetsu cells, no one could predict how powerful her sage body would become. There were risks, and Shinji didn't hide them. "There are dangers in transplanting special cells," he warned, "but with your sage body and the Manjikyo Sharingan, the risk is much smaller." The high-quality yin chakra from the Manjikyo could balance the yang chakra in the white Zetsu cells, and Karen's potent Uzumaki vitality added resilience. Shinji was confident the procedure wouldn't endanger her. Karen's answer came even faster than before. "When can we do it?" she asked. She was no longer the timid girl she'd been. Her mother's suffering had forged fierce resolve. She wanted strength now so she could go to the grass village and demand justice herself, loudly, relentlessly, face to face. Chapter 88. Please follow up. I've heard today is the most crucial day. Today's follow-up reads directly affect whether the story can make it to Sanjiang next week. So please, everyone, help out and go to the end of book page. Only then will it count as an effective follow-up read. Last week I missed the target by 10 follow-up reads, which was really frustrating. This week is the last chance, so I'm counting on you. Finally, thank you all for your support with rewards, recommendation tickets, and monthly passes these past few days. I see every bit of your support. Thank you. After severing Karen's spiritual projection, Shinji sat quietly in the Jiva space, his mind strangely blank. The operation had gone more smoothly than he'd expected, but he wasn't satisfied. Karen and her mother's suffering was, to him, not an isolated case, but a symptom of the ninja world itself. Karen wasn't the only one broken. He was a remnant Uchiha. Haku came from the ruined Yuki clan. Naruto had never known his parents. Neji had watched his father die when he was 5, and even Shion, who seemed carefree, secretly craved affection. The world needed to change. Pointless conflicts had to be reduced. The thought settled in him like something with roots. He remembered the Dawn mission that had echoed in his mind when he first awakened. What did Dawn mean? He had asked Lamp, but Lamp had offered no hint. Pulling his thoughts back, Shinji composed himself and activated the Jiva, searching for Deidara's spiritual form. The link established quickly, and another projection appeared in the quiet space. What is this place? Deidara asked, looking around with genuine curiosity rather than alarm. Shinji leaned back in the stone chair at the round table and said calmly, "This is a special space for communication among our inner circle. Nothing said here can leak out, so relax." Deidara clicked his tongue, impressed. "I didn't expect a jutsu like this. It's a lot like the Bringer of Darkness technique the Outer Circle leader uses." Unlike Haku and Karen, Deidara needed no further explanation. He immediately grasped the Jiva space's nature and, for the first time, regarded Shinji with a measure of awe. He'd never thought much about the Akatsuki as a whole, not that he cared, given his reckless temperament, but after some time inside the organization, he realized it was far stronger than he'd imagined. The leader allegedly possessed the Six-Path Sage's eyes, and every member he'd met in the organization was an S-rank wanted criminal. He'd assumed he'd been recruited into the Outer Circle. Now he found the Inner Circle's existence astonishing. Deidara glanced at the round table and counted the seats. Including me, there are 7 members in the Inner Circle? He sat in an empty chair. Shinji fought the urge to ask whether Deidara had acquired the white Zetsu cells, but kept his expression neutral. "Anything unusual in the Outer Circle lately?" Deidara brightened. "Everything's unusual. Except me, there's no one normal out there." "You're not exactly normal either," Shinji muttered under his breath. Deidara leaned forward. "Who do you want me to monitor? Which Outer Circle members are with us? Who do we have to watch out for?" Shinji hesitated. The encounter with Deidara had been opportunistic. He'd only improvised the idea of monitoring Outer Circle members. Now Deidara asked for specifics, and Shinji had to come up with something. He settled on a warning that was both cautious and blunt. Don't trust the Uchiha. Deidara gave him a sharp look and leaned back, creating distance. Shinji added, exasperated, "I mean the Uchiha in the Outer Circle." Deidara frowned. "There's another Uchiha in the Outer Circle besides Itachi. How come I didn't know?" "That's why I told you to hide your Inner Circle identity," Shinji said. Deidara rubbed his chin, suddenly serious. I'll be careful." Shinji moved on. "How did the mission I gave you go?" "Done," Deidara replied. Shinji allowed himself a small thrill but kept his tone cautious. "You didn't alert them?" "Probably not." Deidara shrugged. "I made it look like I was just annoyed about being watched, so he didn't catch on, but his tissue was strange. I sensed a very strong yang release chakra in it." Shinji had underestimated Deidara's perception. He let the subject drop, steering the conversation toward the logistics of the exchange. They arranged the details, and then Shinji cut the link. When Deidara's projection vanished from the Jiva space, Shinji stood and punched the air once, hard. White Zetsu cells. Karen's problem solved. The anxious days that had weighed on him were suddenly worth it. He felt a private triumph. Pretending to be Akatsuki and recruiting Deidara had not only yielded the cells, but also planted an informant inside the organization. In the small town's inn, Deidara blinked and came back to himself. He thought, a little stunned, the Inner Circle's more mysterious than the Outer Circle. He also wondered about that other Uchiha Shinji had mentioned. In the woods outside the town, a single-eyed mask hung from a branch while another figure emerged from a hollowed trunk. Obito and Zetsu had followed Deidara here. Zetsu's sensing had picked up the white Zetsu cells Deidara carried, and they'd trailed him to the inn. "That guy hasn't come back out since he went into the inn," Obito observed. Zetsu shook his head. "That's odd." Obito frowned. Deidara's attack on Zetsu earlier still left him uncertain whether Deidara had acted on impulse or had been instigated by someone. White Zetsu's voice piped up, casual and unconcerned. "It's not surprising. Someone who talks about explosions all the time will do anything." Black Zetsu's tone was quieter, more deliberate. It's not that simple. Did Itachi recruit him? Obito asked. White Zetsu nodded. Yes, Itachi, Biwa Juzo, and Sasori went together. Obito's gaze darkened. Is Itachi looking into something? Sigh, he's a troublesome guy. Shinji had no idea that Zetsu and Obito already knew Deidara had stolen White Zetsu cells, nor that Obito had framed Itachi for it. After the meeting in the Jiva space, Deidara had not handed the cells over in person. Instead, he used clay spiders to deliver the stolen White Zetsu cells covertly into a forest, then left town on his clay bird. Obito and Zetsu tailed him in haste and had no time to search the town. 3 days later, on a quiet night, Coal Ball used transparent escape to melt into a shadow and slip into the woods. He found the clay spider Deidara had left, retrieved a small culture dish hidden inside it, and brought the White Zetsu cells back. Back at the apartment, counting the time, Shinji bit his finger, formed hand seals, and performed the summoning technique. A pop of smoke, and Coal Ball appeared. Did you get it? Shinji asked. Coal Ball produced the culture dish from a pouch and offered it. Is this what you wanted? Shinji snatched the dish, popped the lid, and stared. He breathed out long and slow. The small cluster of pale tissue inside was unmistakable. White Zetsu cells. They were wildly active. Under the faint halo of his Mangekyo Sharingan, he could almost see the tissue twitching, unlike any sample he'd seen in the medical team's labs. Coal Ball leaned in, curious. What is it? Can I eat it? Shinji jabbed a finger at his head. All you ever think about is eating. Coal Ball pulled his head back and grumbled, and all you ever think about is bossing cats around, not even sharing a bite. You stingy. I heard that. Shinji cut him off and moved on. How's that woman settled in? Shinji's chakra was limited. He couldn't maintain a shadow clone for long stretches. After arriving in the Land of Fire, he'd had Coal Ball take Karen's mother under his care. Coal Ball answered, I put her in a small town not far from Cat Country. I used the money you gave me to buy her a little house. Shinji put the culture dish away and asked, Is she all right? Coal Ball nodded. Yeah. Her colors come back a lot over the last few days. Shinji relaxed. Karen's mother was from the Whirlpool clan. If she didn't overdraw her chakra again, her drained vitality might recover. At least she wouldn't be in immediate danger. The next morning, Shinji skipped ninja school and went straight to the medical team's laboratory. Because he'd been spending so much time there recently, Inaho Kaoru had helped him secure a lab space just for his work. Once the door was shut, Shinji set the White Zetsu cells under the lab's instruments and began testing. Instrument after instrument spit out numbers, and Shinji's eyes brightened. He recorded the data, muttering to himself, cellular activity 28 times an ordinary person, division rate 5 times faster, peak chakra fluctuation over 60 times normal. This is insane. Here, ordinary person didn't mean a common civilian. In the medical team's comparisons, an ordinary person had to have at least basic ninja talent. Even against that baseline, the White Zetsu cells outstripped normal ninja tissue in every metric. Viewed biologically, the gap between White Zetsu cells and ordinary ninja cells was greater than between human and pig tissue. That thought brought Shinji to a different file. He quickly hid the culture dish, cleared the instrument's active sessions, and found Inaho Kaoru. I need the first-generation cell data, he said. Inaho looked startled. What? You want the Shodai cell data? Shinji explained he'd been doing transplant experiments and found references to an old village experiment on the first-generation cells in the archives, but the files were sealed and his clearance wasn't enough. Inaho hesitated. That experiment is classified. Even I have to apply to higher-ups for access, and approval isn't guaranteed. I only need the cell data, Shinji said, not the whole archive. Inaho thought for a moment. Okay, I'll apply. Konoha's medical team kept detailed records on first-generation cells, and, Shinji had heard, even sealed live samples in their vault. After the disastrous history of related experiments, all work had been suspended and the materials locked down. Inaho could get access to the data more easily than to the actual cells, though. By afternoon, Inaho handed over the sealed dataset and warned Shinji to keep it in the lab. Shinji began side-by-side comparisons. First-generation cells were on a different scale entirely. Cellular activity over 80 times normal, division rate 15 times faster, and peak chakra nearly 200 times an ordinary person. Shinji stared at the numbers. This is like a humanoid-tailed beast. No, even more extreme. No wonder Madara, even with the 9 tails, couldn't beat Shodai. He clicked his tongue. Compared to first-generation data, the white Zetsu cells he'd thought so potent suddenly seemed mild. No wonder so few can withstand first-generation cells. It's no miracle, it's statistical impossibility. Someone like Yamato, who managed to endure them, is basically a freak of chance. Shinji felt lucky he'd chosen white Zetsu cells. The first-generation cells' sheer intensity pushed beyond normal biological limits. Even if an ordinary body could somehow accept them, it wouldn't be able to tap their full potential. White Zetsu cells, with metrics only a third to a quarter of first-generation cells, were gentler and much more manageable. Over the next 3 days, Shinji ran more than 100 in vitro fusion trials between Karen's cells and white Zetsu cells. The results were promising. Fusion rates exceeded 55%. If Karen's Mangekyo Sharingan, which could balance the yang chakra in white Zetsu tissue, were involved, the rate might climb another 20 to 30 points. An 80% success rate meant that, barring bad luck, things would probably go smoothly. After nearly another week of preparations, Shinji suited up. He slipped into the red cloud cloak, pulled on his mask, and crept into Karen's room late that night. Chapter 91, Transplant Surgery. Because they had already been in contact in Jiva space, Karen was not surprised by the leader's late-night visit. She glanced at Shinji and asked, "Lord, can we do the surgery now?" "Yes." Shinji set out the surgical instruments, keeping one eye on Karen. She looked composed, but Shinji caught the brief flicker of fear in her gaze. When everything was ready, he said slowly, "I've run the tests. The risk is controllable. Your tissue is stronger than I expected, and with the Uzumaki vitality you possess, even if a severe rejection occurs, I'll have time to excise the cells." "I understand." Karen swallowed the tension but kept her faith in him. The eye transplant had gone smoothly before, and despite her fear, she chose to face this next step. She lay on the bed, and Shinji injected the fusion fluid he had prepared. Then he leaned close and ordered, "Look into my eyes." Karen obeyed, staring at the scarlet Mangekyo Sharingan behind Shinji's mask. Almost instantly, her expression dulled. The transplanted Mangekyo in her socket, the dujutsu that had lain dormant, shifted from its dark, lifeless hue to scarlet. 3 tomoi spun into being, then coalesced into the complex Mangekyo pattern. "Who?" Shinji exhaled and released Karen from the genjutsu. She gasped, "Is this the Mangekyo Sharingan?" He had used genjutsu to stimulate the transplanted eye so it would awaken and release intense yin-release chakra, countering the excess yang-release chakra of the white Zetsu cells. Although Karen had carried that Mangekyo for some time, it had never awakened before. The sudden surge of insight and the flood of eye technique knowledge left her stunned. "You adapt to it first," Shinji said. He didn't start the transplant immediately. He waited for Karen to acclimate to the Mangekyo's yin chakra and for the fusion fluid to take full effect. Time passed. After about half an hour, he finally announced, "We're about to begin. If your body can't bear it, immediately mobilize the Mangekyo's yin-release chakra. It will neutralize some of the excess yang." Karen nodded quickly. The fusion fluid had taken hold, so Shinji seized the opening and began the cell transplant. The procedure wasn't much more complicated than the eye transplant. He had practiced it countless times in the lab and was practiced and precise. In under 10 minutes, he completed the transplantation and sutured her arm. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Just a little itchy." Karen frowned. "My arm, it feels like a bunch of tiny bugs are crawling all over it." "That's normal." Shinji's voice was calm. He expected far worse scenarios. Large-scale necrosis of graft tissue, white Zetsu going berserk and proliferating using the host chakra, or a violent rejection with swelling and bleeding. Itching and a slight fever, however, were typical fusion reactions, the best possible immediate outcomes. Under Shinji's guidance, Karen channeled the Mangekyo's yin-release chakra to neutralize the white Zetsu cell's yang-release chakra. The effect was dramatic. The itching subsided, and Shinji, watching closely, noticed something astonishing. There were old and new bite marks along Karen's arm, scars left from past healings, one even from Shinji himself. As Karen directed yin to meet yang, Those scars faded rapidly, the skin smoothing and becoming flawless, almost before his eyes. He felt a thrill. Karen's peculiar constitution made her unusually tolerant of yang-released chakra, which explained why the medical ninjutsu by Shinji and Kohlball had no effect on her mother. Yet the instant fading of scars suggested something more. High-quality yin combined with high-quality yang was producing restorative effects far beyond ordinary healing. Shinji's gaze snapped to the transplanted manjikyo in her left eye. It pulsed with a new vigor, glowing an eerie red as if being nourished. Even the blind right eye, once pale and inert, showed faint traces of dark pigmentation forming on the pupil. The signs were subtle, but they were unmistakable. "It's recovering," he breathed. Before the surgery, he had suspected that Karen's Uzumaki sage body, combined with Senju traits from white Zetsu cells and the influence of the divine tree, might produce something miraculous. Seeing it unfold still stunned him. He thought of Obito, of how he had used white Zetsu cells and a Manjekyo like an eternal Manjekyo, and couldn't help but marvel at what white Zetsu represented. Madara's greatest scientific triumph after the battle at the Valley of the End. Only someone with the Rinnegan, first-generation cells, and the Outer Path's power could create specialized white Zetsu. No ordinary tech fanatic in the ninja world, not Orochimaru, Hiruko, nor Sasori, could match that. Shinji gathered himself, made surgical notes, and asked, "How is the arm now?" "My arm doesn't itch anymore," Karen said. "And your eyes?" Karen blinked, startled, then focused inward. A red projection sprang from her, a phantom of chakra and vision that shimmered in the air. "What is that?" Shinji's eyes widened. Instantly, he raised his own Mangekyo and wove a genjutsu around her, taking control of the moment. In an instant, a red skeletal arm shot out from Karen, who was lying on the bed. It seized Shinji, who stood beside her, and hoisted him into the air. Beneath his mask, Shinji's face registered surprise and unease. Sensing something wrong, he immediately cast an eye technique at Karen, but the technique that had always worked before failed. Karen merely paused for a moment and then broke free. "My lord, how could this happen?" Karen cried, terrified as she lay on the bed. She had only been following Shinji's instructions to concentrate on the manjikyo in her eye socket, yet somehow she had triggered an outburst of dojutsu. Shinji, still held aloft by the spectral Susanoo, did not struggle to provoke her further. He spoke calmly instead. "Don't panic. Your dojutsu is out of control." "What should I do?" Karen stammered, flustered. "Too much turbulent yang-release chakra surged into your body and activated your manjikyo," Shinji explained, soothing her. "Don't resist my eye techniques now. I'll help you dispel it." "Yes," Karen nodded quickly. Shinji focused and cast his eye technique again. With her will relaxed, Karen finally yielded. Her gaze blurred, and the skeletal phantom extending from her body faded away. Shinji gently lowered himself to the floor and exhaled in relief. Fortunately, Karen had suppressed the runaway dojutsu in time, otherwise her apartment would have been wrecked. Even so, Shinji noticed several cracked places on the ceiling where Karen's Susanoo had struck. "It almost escalated," he muttered. He looked at Karen with a mixture of awe and concern. Activating Susanoo with a single eye, especially a manjikyo, is something only a few can achieve, and Karen, a non-Uchiha, had done it. Though it had been an unconscious rampage, if she trained properly, a single-eye Susanoo might become effortless for her. Such a powerful sage body. With the fact that his previous eye techniques had been instinctively broken indicated that the dojutsu in Karen's half-damaged Mangekyo had spiked in potency in that brief moment. After a pause, Shinji released his techniques. Karen, recovering, kept apologizing. "My lord, I didn't mean to. I don't know why I did that." Shinji raised a hand to stop her. "Try to deactivate your Sharingan now." After his intervention, Karen's eye had fallen back to a 3-tomoe state. She tried obediently, then shook her head. "My lord, I can't deactivate it." "As expected," Shinji said lightly. Non-Uchiha cannot fully control activation and deactivation of the Sharingan. Kakashi had been the same. For Shinji, that wasn't a bad thing. He intended to transplant grandmother Uchiha Chiri's half-damaged Mangekyo into Karen later and let Karen's sage body repair it. As long as he didn't help Karen activate her Sharingan, she couldn't perceive the techniques encoded in it, so she wouldn't be able to use Naobi or the potentially restorable Magatsu. It wasn't a matter of distrust. Mangekyo Sharingan techniques contain the core secrets of an eye technique ninja and should not be exposed if it could be avoided. Shinji activated his own Mangekyo and used an eye technique to help Karin deactivate the three Tomoe state, restoring the Mangekyo to its ink-black dormancy. I've helped you deactivate your Sharingan. Your dojutsu shouldn't run wild anymore. Thank you, my lord, Karin breathed. While he tidied the surgical instruments, Shinji gave instructions. Cell fusion takes time. This cycle usually lasts 1 to 3 weeks. During that period, you need to be careful and not get overly emotional. Yes, Karin nodded. During the fusion, your chakra will grow rapidly. I can't say exactly how much it will increase, but given how things look now, it's going to be very, very exaggerated. Exaggerated? Karin code puzzled. Shinji didn't elaborate. He wasn't sure how far her sage body would ultimately advance, so he changed the subject. Pay close attention to changes in your eyes, especially your blind right eye. Record any changes in detail every day. I will, she promised. Adapt slowly, he added. After one last look at her, he left the room. Back in his apartment, Shinji's mind was still unsettled. The effect of transplanting white Zetsu cells into Karin had been astonishing. He suspected that after the fusion period, the activity of her cells could approach that of the first Hokages. If Karin later developed wood release or further unlocked hidden powers in her bloodline, her cellular activity might even surpass the first Hokages. She could become, in his private speculation, a living power bank, a conscious petri dish. He shook his head, pushing those strange thoughts away, and focused on planning his next steps. Karin's current yang release chakra already had the capacity to slowly restore a blind Mangekyo. After the fusion, her yang chakra would advance another level, and fully restoring a blind Mangekyo would likely be only a matter of time. Once 2 half-damaged Mangekyo were restored, Shinji could transplant grandmother Chiri's half-damaged Mangekyo into Karin. When Chiri's Mangekyo were restored, he could use the Susanoo lantern to fuse an eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. What had once seemed risky and tentative now looked within reach. Thanks to the success of the cell transplant, he was merely waiting for the opportunity to obtain a pair of eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Completely destroyed Mangekyo are a different matter and might be beyond Karin's repair. But even if she could only restore 2 pairs of half-damaged Mangekyo, Shinji would have 4 Mangekyo to work with, enough to forge 2 eternal Mangekyo Sharingan if everything went according to plan. Chapter 93, available tomorrow. It will be released at noon on Friday, tomorrow. This book has been uploaded for over a month now, and it's all thanks to everyone's support. Although I still didn't make it to Sanjiang in the end, I did my best and have no regrets. I'll keep writing earnestly, and you can keep reading quietly. The road is still long. Let's walk it together. Please subscribe tomorrow. This is very, very important. Note, the author is a human being and needs food to survive. If you have the means, please leave a reward and cast a monthly vote. I'm very grateful to you all. Chapter 94. Monsters, please subscribe. A week later, thump, a dull impact sent Shinji flying backward. Before he could recover, Karin struck again. His eyes narrowed. His hands flashed through the seals. Fire release, great fireball technique. Boom. A searing fireball roared from his mouth, heat waves rippling outward, aimed straight at the charging Karin. Using the blast as cover, Shinji slipped into the canopy of a large tree. Swish, swish. His ears twitched at the sound of wind breaking behind him, and he leaped upward. The instant his front foot pushed off, 2 senbon with a cold glint clinked onto the branch where his back foot had been. That was close. Suspended in the air, Shinji glanced down, impressed and alarmed. Then Karin appeared from nowhere and punched him, leaving him no leverage to recover. He had to brace and take the blow. Thump! The impact shoved him back hard. He went crashing into a trunk and stopped. Karin dropped lightly to the ground nearby and grinned with bright-eyed eagerness. Well, did I get better this time? Shinji gripped the trembling bark to steady himself. The tree shivered, leaves spun and drifted down. He opened his mouth but couldn't find words. Karin's improvement was plain to see, especially her speed and strength. Karin had always been an excellent sensory ninja. With this gain in raw power and her delicate sensory ability, her combat effectiveness had shot up exponentially. Just exchanging blows with her had left Shinji's arms sore and his head buzzing. What kind of monster had he cultivated? He thought back to the lab. After gradually accepting white Zetsu cells, Karin, like Madara, Obito, and others who had fused with first-generation cells, had gained the ability to activate wood release. But Shinji knew the difference. Wood release triggered by first-generation or white Zetsu cells isn't the same as truly mastering the nature transformation. It was an opportunistic effect. The advantage being you didn't have to perfectly master both water and earth transformations. The danger being that if emotions flared or the body's chakra balance broke down, the cells could lose control and a wood release rampage could occur. That was why Shinji had always urged Karin to learn wood release properly through her own nature transformation. Only then would she truly have it. Most people who'd taken first-generation or Zetsu transplantation hadn't achieved complete fusion. Danzo propped himself up with dozens of transplanted Sharingan to keep his yin-yang chakra in balance. Madara and Obito were a step above, but still bore obvious graft marks. Even Yamato, though relatively stable, had rejected much of the cells during transplant and only accepted a sliver, so his potential was limited. Karin's condition was close to Madara and Obito. The grafted area on her arm still had a wrinkled mark she couldn't erase. She wasn't the perfect sage body Shinji imagined. Only when she'd fully digested the white Zetsu cells, lost all graft marks, and wood release would never run wild, would she reach that ideal. Still, she was terrifying already. Shinji could only imagine how far further she might go. "Ha! Shinji's sharp," Haku called, stepping out from the trees. "You even dodged my sneak attack." Shinji stared at him. "Are you trying to reassure me?" Without activating his Manjikyo Sharingan, he could no longer completely dominate Haku and Karin. To outsiders, it looked like Shinji, the academy prodigy, was casually sparring with the two underachievers. The reality was that normally, Shinji was the second strongest in their trio, and he could see himself slipping to third soon. "Let's go. School," Shinji said, waving them along. Haku and Karin followed close behind. Over the past days, the three had grown closer. They trained after school and met for morning sparring. They'd become a de facto little group, partly by design. Shinji needed to keep checking the state of the half-damaged Manjikyo Sharingan in Karin's right eye. In recent matches, Karin's blind right eye had started to sense light. He'd attacked from that side several times, and she'd managed to block him. Tonight, he planned to go to Karin's room and confirm it properly. If that damaged Manjikyo had regained sight, he could try transplanting Grandmother Uchiha Chiri's half-damaged Manjikyo into Karin, and, if all went well, fuse them into an eternal Manjikyo Sharingan within a week. At school, Iruka-sensei announced the finals would be held in 3 days. To cultivate teamwork, the academy was running the exams as 3-person squads. The classroom buzzed instantly. Everyone leaned in and whispered about teams. Tenten grabbed Neiji's sleeve and turned to Shinji. "Shinji, let's team up. I checked with Iruka. Classes will compete against each other. The 3 of us would be unbeatable." Neji frowned. "Kimimaro won't be easy." Shinji was about to answer when he caught sight of Karin sitting alone in the front row, stealing glances at him. When she realized he'd noticed, she turned her head back, flustered. No one had asked the reclusive Karin to join a team, and she looked embarrassed. Shinji smiled at Tenten and Neji. "Sorry, I already made a team." Tenten's eyes lit up. "Who with?" He pointed to the front. "Haku and Karin. We set it up this morning." Haku in the front row looked surprised but pleased. Karin, who'd been eavesdropping, exhaled and smiled with relief. Chapter 95, Oil Bottles, Seeking Subscription. Tenten looked a little disappointed. "Shinji, can't you reconsider? If you and Neji split up, your chances of winning will be much smaller." Neji glanced at Shinji but said nothing. He wanted to win, but he didn't want to rely entirely on others for victory. If Shinji teamed up with him, he'd be glad. If not, he wouldn't force the issue. Shinji shook his head. "I'm sorry, we've already formed a team. You two should find others." "All right, then." Tenten and Neji left reluctantly. No sooner had they gone than Karin ran up to Shinji, looking pitiful. "Shinji, thank you for teaming up with me." Shinji replied flatly, "Don't drag me down." Karin nodded earnestly. "I won't. I'll do my best." Haku smiled. "That's great. The 3 of us can take the exam together." Shinji had felt a flicker of guilt just now when no one invited Karin to join a team. What worried him more, though, was that Karen's chakra was increasing at an alarming rate. What if she lost control and hurt someone during the exam without him there to watch her? He'd agreed to the team partly to keep an eye on her, and on Haku, another potential danger. In short, his choice wasn't so much about taking care of them as it was about restraining two volatile forces. By a quirk of timing, Tenten and Neji's new teammate turned out to be Lee, near the bottom of the class. Maybe Tenten had seen Lee left out and felt sorry for him. In her view, as long as Neji was on the team, even if Lee held them back, it wouldn't be a disaster. When morning classes ended, the students who'd formed teams gathered on the training field to practice three-person coordination. Shinji led Haku and Karen over. Sasuke saw them, walked up quickly, and frowned. "Shinji, why are you hanging around with those two? Don't you know this will turn into class versus class competitions?" He was referring to Haku and Karen. Haku paid no mind, but Karen bristled at being dismissed. Shinji glanced at Naruto and Sakura, who had come with Sasuke, and lamenting the inertia of fate, shot back. "Your teammates aren't that great either." "Hey, who are you calling not great?" Naruto rolled up his sleeves, ready to argue. Sasuke raised a hand to stop him. "Idiot, you're no match for him. Only I might be able to beat this guy." Sakura stepped forward to calm Naruto. Then someone called from a distance, "Shinji, over here." Everyone turned to see Shion striding up, holding Kimimaro by one hand, and a girl Shinji didn't know well by the other. Sasuke's expression darkened at the sight of Kimimaro. Their sparring matches had become a weekly thing. Despite Sasuke's improvements, Kimimaro still outclassed him. Sasuke had already pegged Kimimaro as a lifelong rival. Shion greeted Shinji with feigned warmth. "Shinji, have you been avoiding me on purpose lately?" "Why would I avoid you?" Shinji said, then blinked. "Hold on, why are you at the Ninja Academy?" "Guess." Shion struck a smug pose. Naruto shouted, "Aren't you a transfer student in our class?" Shinji stared. "You actually enrolled at the academy?" Shion tapped Naruto on the head in annoyance and put her hands on her hips. "That's right. I, Lady Shion, am a ninja now." Shion had wanted to be in Shinji's class, but the third Hokage had placed her in Sasuke and Naruto's, which she'd grumbled about ever since. Shinji glanced at the expressionless Kimimaro Shion was dragging along and asked, "Did you two team up?" Shion nodded. "Yes. Seeing how they were left out, I teamed up with them." The girl being pulled along spoke up in a soft voice. "Wasn't Kimimaro paired with us because no one else wanted him?" Shion snapped. "Yakumo Kurama." The girl, Yakumo, ignored the outburst and bowed politely. "Hello, everyone. I'm Yakumo Kurama. I rarely attend the academy because of health reasons. Please look after me." Haku and Karen quickly bowed in return and introduced themselves. At that moment, Tenten, Neji, and Lee returned. When they learned that Sasuke, Naruto, and Sakura had formed a team and that Kimimaro had paired with Shion and Yakumo, Tenten grinned. "This is getting interesting. 4 geniuses split across 4 teams. Who will come out on top?" Sasuke scanned the field and realized she was right. His eyes flared with competitive fire. "Everyone has 2 deadweights. It's fair." Neji nodded once. Lee stepped forward, earnest. "Naruto, even if we're the deadweights, we'll try our hardest." "I am not a deadweight," Naruto shouted. "Neither am I," Shion protested. "You are," Yakumo Kurama said nonchalantly. Shion fumed. "You are." Yakumo remained calm. "Yes, we all are." As the teams dispersed to practice, Karen, sensing pressure from Sasuke, Neji, and Kimimaro, turned to Shinji. "Shinji, I won't be a deadweight or drag you down." Shinji glanced at her and thought, "Just don't kill anyone." Hokage's office. The third Hokage's gaze swept over Kakashi, Kurenai Yuhi, and Aoba Yamashiro. Recently, several villages have reported mysterious disappearances of ninja, including many elite jonin. Kakashi felt a chill as he remembered his encounter at Kikyo Pass not long ago. Kurenai asked, "Hokage-sama, are there any leads?" After taking a puff from his pipe, the third Hokage said slowly, "There are rumors linking these disappearances to an organization called Akatsuki. You 3 will form a temporary team, Kakashi as leader, to investigate the missing ninja." "Yes," the 3 answered in unison. The third Hokage continued, "Kakashi, stay. The others may leave for now." Kurenai and Aoba bowed and left the office. Kakashi hesitated. "Hokage-sama, is there anything specific we should be aware of for this operation?" The third Hokage considered for a moment. "The village has an informant within Akatsuki. You must meet him in secret. Kakashi's brow lifted. Who? The third Hokage spoke the name softly. It's him. Kakashi looked surprised. Second update is here. More to come. Please support me. Vote, monthly tickets, and subscribe. Chapter 96. Trap, please subscribe. At night, Shinji, cloaked in the Akatsuki's red cloud cloak and wearing a mask, slipped once more into Karen's room. Karen, facing the man posing as the Akatsuki leader, still felt a little guarded. Sir, she said. Shinji nodded and first checked the transplant site on Karen's arm. The skin there was still wrinkled, just as before. He then focused on her eyes. How's your right eye? Karen handed him her small notebook. These past few days, my eye sometimes swells, and it throbs in the socket like a heartbeat? Shinji finished. Karen nodded repeatedly. Yes, yes. That's the eye developing, Shinji said, then asked, Can you see anything yet? I can only barely make out light and shadow. A pleased expression crossed Shinji's masked face. He flipped through Karen's records. The notes and her recent report convinced him more than ever that the blind right eye in her socket was recovering, and that its recovery was accelerating with the progress of the cellular fusion. He couldn't give an exact timetable, but it wouldn't be long. He glanced at her other eye. What about your left eye? My left sometimes throbs along with the right. Karen hesitated, then brightened. But my vision is getting better and better. I can see things clearly dozens of meters away. Karen had poor eyesight since childhood and had worn glasses for a long time, so she was especially sensitive to improvements. After the Mangekyo Sharingan transplant, she felt the world before her change. Even the dojutsu in my left eye is improving. Shinji understood. The potency of a dojutsu directly affected vision. When its power was depleted, sight would blur. He had experienced this himself, so he knew that improved vision usually meant the dojutsu was strengthening. Closing Karen's notebook, he reminded her, while you infuse yang-release chakra into your right eye, don't neglect your wood-release training. Karen hesitated, biting her lip. Shinji read her expression and continued, only by mastering wood release through nature fusion and being able to infuse it with yang-release chakra imbued with the divine tree's properties, will you be able to fully assimilate the special cells in your body and raise your sage body to its peak. Will I be able to heal Mother then? Karen asked at last. Shinji nodded gently. By that point, your sage body will surpass your mother's completely. Restoring her lost vitality will be easy. Karen's eyes lit up. Shinji said nothing more and turned to leave. Plane encountered invasion. Countdown. Please prepare for the attack immediately. A voice from his lamp sounded in his ear. Hearing the long-feared warning, he narrowed his eyes. Another 0 countdown. From past experience, Shinji knew a 0 countdown meant the other party had already infiltrated the ninja world some time ago, but had remained hidden from his lamp, shrouded in shadow, until now. In other words, detection this late made it hard to tell whether the intruders had intended to be discovered. Could it be a trap? Land of Fire, Midori Town. Biwa Juzo walked through the bustling night market and sighed, I never thought a small town's market could be this lively. The Land of Fire, indeed. Itachi, who was with him, stopped and glanced toward a stall. Biwa followed his gaze. A dumpling stand? Itachi, do you like sweets? They're not good for your teeth. Let's go in and rest a bit, Itachi replied. Biwa smiled. Then let's rest as you say. They stepped into the dumpling shop and each ordered a skewer and a cup of Midori Town's specialty high mountain green tea. Chewing his dumplings, Biwa said, Itachi, I didn't expect someone like you to enjoy this. You don't like it? Itachi asked. Too greasy. Biwa set down his bamboo skewer and looked out at the market. Those impersonators wearing our cloak should be around here. They hadn't come to browse the night market. The Akatsuki was currently in a period of build-up. Though they took occasional commissions, they hadn't provoked the 5 great shinobi nations. In Nagato's plan, the Akatsuki needed another 6 or 7 years to reach the strength necessary to change the world. Nagato himself still had to learn the limits of the Rinnegan and how to control it, a task that had taxed him greatly. That struggle was why he had once watched his closest friend be killed by Hanzo and Danzo. So the Akatsuki operated in secret, developing quietly. For some unknown reason, however, a group recently began operating under the Akatsuki's banner, attacking shinobi from the 5 great nations. Nagato had been furious when he heard the news. Anyone undermining his plan had to be eliminated, so he sent Itachi and Biwa to investigate. Itachi sipped his tea, thoughtful. Unlike Biwa, who was a straightforward rogue shinobi, Itachi carried hidden cares. He couldn't let the village believe he'd fully betrayed them. He couldn't bear to imagine what treatment his younger brother would face if that happened. Huh? Biwa suddenly stood. Itachi snapped his attention back to the market and saw a figure in an Akatsuki red cloud cloak flash among the crowd. His gaze sharpened and his expression hardened. Apart from them, no other Akatsuki members were nearby. Seeing that cloak, they knew at once the person was one of the impostors attacking the 5 great nations while masquerading as the Akatsuki. Biwa smiled. Let's get to work. Itachi set his teacup down gently and nodded. First update. Please vote for recommendations and monthly tickets. Chapter 97. Standoff on the Long Street. Please subscribe. At the same time, on the other side of the night market, 3 cloaked figures pushed through the crowd. Kakashi, Kurenai Yuhi, and Aoba Yamashiro. Konoha's intelligence had tracked an Akatsuki member who had been attacking Konoha shinobi in the area, and at first the victims had only been Genin and Chunin. The village had sent a small team led by a special jonin to investigate, but that team had gone silent. That alone had drawn serious attention. Special jonin of the 5 great shinobi countries were more than capable, and for one to vanish without a trace meant the situation was worse than expected. So this time, they had sent Kakashi. Kurenai muttered, "Who are these Akatsuki members? How dare they attack Konoha within the land of fire?" Aoba, uneasy, added, "They're acting like they own the place." Kakashi said nothing. Unlike his companions, he had been briefed by the 3rd Hokage and knew better than to treat the Akatsuki as a typical band of missing nin. Most of its members were S-rank criminals hunted by the great villages. Even Orochimaru had at one point been tied to the organization. Kakashi's real orders were not just to investigate the missing Konoha shinobi overtly, but to make contact with the village's informant inside Akatsuki and learn what the group was planning. He was still thinking that when he halted, brow creased. Kurenai and Aoba froze with him, eyes scanning the crowd. Ahead, a white-haired young man stood out, wearing the Akatsuki red cloud cloak. He smiled in a way that revealed no warmth. His pupils were an odd, multicolored pattern. Inscribed across them were the characters for Upper Moon in one eye and 5 in the other. Kurenai whispered into Kakashi's ear, "Is it him?" Kakashi slid his forehead protector aside, revealing the crimson of his Sharingan. The 3-tomo eye let him read the flow of chakra on the man's surface. After a moment, his expression tightened. The Sharingan could not peer as deeply as a Byakugan, but even from the chakra visible on the skin, it was clear the man's reserves were far greater than Kakashi's. Kakashi, renowned as the copy ninja, had Jonin-level chakra at best. This man was not ordinary. "Shall we move in?" Aoba asked. Kurenai spread her glance across the market. "There are too many bystanders. Using ninjutsu risks collateral damage. I can try genjutsu to drop him, then we can move him somewhere quiet and question him." Kakashi hesitated. He had been prepared to contact an Akatsuki insider, but he hadn't expected an unfamiliar Akatsuki member standing in the open. Before he could decide, his attention was drawn to the far end of the crowd. Itachi and Biwa Juzo were there too, also in Akatsuki cloaks and wearing straw hats. Itachi and Biwa saw Kakashi and the others, and they noticed the white-haired man between the two groups. Biwa's hand tightened on the hilt of the Kubikiri Bocho on his back. "Another one with carved eyes," he said coldly. Itachi narrowed his eyes. When he opened them again, his pupils glinted crimson, but he did not act. Something about the scene felt wrong. The long street of the night market became a tense triangle. Kakashi's team one way, Itachi and Biwa another, with the white-haired man in the middle. Vendors cried out, people moved through them, oblivious to the charged standoff. The white-haired man covered his mouth with a golden fan and smiled. He looked up toward a rooftop along the street. Both Kakashi and Itachi followed his gaze. On the roof, 3 more figures in red cloud cloaks and masks had appeared. The one in front stood alone, looking down. The mask hid his face, but Kakashi and Itachi both felt a cold, almost natural indifference radiating from him. 2 others stood behind him. Although their robes and masks matched, the way they held themselves made their hierarchy plain. 3 more, Aoba reported. Kurenai frowned. If this turns into a brawl, innocents will get hurt. Even with the reinforcements, Kurenai and Aoba weren't trembling. Either could normally handle a small team of rogue ninja. With Kakashi leading them, their odds seemed fair. Kakashi, however, shook his head. Don't act rashly, he warned. Confusion tightened on all sides. 3 separate groups, all in Akatsuki cloaks, and they did not appear allied. Kakashi wanted answers. Now more than ever, he needed to find out what was really happening inside Akatsuki. Itachi and Biwa felt the same uncertainty. Biwa stared up at the rooftop. Itachi, who are those 3? Itachi shook his head minutely. They had targeted the white-haired man already, judging him responsible for the recent attacks on Konoha by imposters wearing Akatsuki garb. But these rooftop figures complicated matters. They, too, seemed hostile toward the street-side group. Let's strike, Biwa urged, setting the Kubikure Bocho on his shoulder. Itachi held him back with a word. Wait, they don't seem allied. Biwa snarled. Allied or not, anyone who dares impersonate the Akatsuki must be punished. The air grew heavier. Then the white-haired man tore off his cloak, bowed with the same thin smile toward the rooftop trio, and announced Upper Moon 5 Doma reporting for duty. He opened the golden fan he had been holding. With a single gentle wave, the ground roared. Icy mist exploded outward as a 20-meter-tall construct of glistening ice, the form of a colossal ice crystal bodhisattva, erupted from the street, looming over the market like a frozen deity. Chapter 98. Is he crazy? As the 20-meter-tall ice crystal bodhisattva rose from the pavement, the ground seemed to tremble with it. Gasps spread through the night market like wildfire. People scattered and fled, cries and warnings rising and falling in a chaotic chorus. Around the bodhisattva, its hands clasped in a prayer pose, ice crystal lotuses bloomed one after another. A cold mist poured from the flowers, and, in moments, the whole market street was shrouded in freezing fog. Residents closest to the sculptures turned to ice statues, then shattered into shards that clattered to the ground. Those a bit farther away who inhaled the mist found their chests tighten. They swayed, gasping for air and collapsing. Ice release? Itachi and Biwa Juzo, positioned down the street, and Kakashi Hatake, Kurenai Yuhi, and Aoba Yamashiro at the other end, all stared in shock. Since the hidden mist wiped out the Yuki clan, ice release Kekkei Genkai users had become extremely rare. The sudden appearance of an ice release user alone was startling, but this white-haired youth's ability to unleash such a terrifying technique without performing hand seals was unimaginable. A 20-meter ice crystal bodhisattva was as tall as a 6- or 7-story building. Even in the days when the Yuki clan still existed, no one had ever heard of an ice release that exaggerated. Seeing the cold mist rolling toward them, Itachi and Biwa Juzo pulled back at once. The enemy's strength was beyond what they'd expected. Kakashi, Kurenai, and Aoba also retreated quickly. Kakashi had some intelligence from the third Hokage and already knew the Akatsuki were a powerful organization, not a ragtag band. But Kurenai and Aoba were shaken. This kind of ice release jutsu was not the work of an ordinary shinobi. The presence of such a terrifying ninja within Akatsuki was alarming. Just as they watched the white-haired youth use ice release and began to fall back, someone on the rooftop barely moved. The leader raised his hand a fraction. An Akatsuki member, in a red cloud cloak and a mask, positioned behind him, leaped into the air and charged straight at the towering ice crystal bodhisattva. Is he crazy? For a moment, Itachi, Biwa Juzo, and the 3 with Kakashi all thought the same thing. Charging that monstrosity head-on was suicide. Even Kage would first probe and search for weaknesses before engaging such power. This guy's dead for sure, Biwa Juzo muttered. As a shinobi from Hidden Mist, he knew ice release intimately. It wasn't merely a stronger water release. To use that caliber of ice release without hand seals and away from a water source meant the opponent was at least an elite jonin. Itachi shared Biwa's assessment. Logically, someone of that strength shouldn't be unknown, but he had never heard of the white-haired youth Duma before. Kakashi, while retreating, ordered Kurenai and Aoba, "Send a distress signal." Kurenai responded without hesitation, firing a flare into the night sky. This was the land of fire. Konoha ninjas might be operating nearby. Aoba summoned a ninja crow and sent the message straight to the village. They judged the three masked Akatsuki on the roof were likely outmatched by Duma. They needed reinforcements to deal with him and to clean up the aftermath. Then, everyone's expressions froze in disbelief. The Akatsuki member they had assumed would die midair suddenly projected a red apparition from his body. In a single heartbeat, the red form, skeletal in appearance, swelled into a giant red skeleton that hovered above the street. It pulled its enormous fist back, gathered strength, and struck toward the 20-meter ice crystal bodhisattva. As it struck, the skeletal giant's bones seemed to thicken and flesh over, muscles, skin, finally donning a layer of hardened armor. A thunderous boom rolled through Matsu town. The red giant's blow slammed into the bodhisattva, causing it to stagger and tilt. Cracks spidered across the carved face where the blow landed. Ice shards scattered. This! Biwajuzo stood stunned, frozen in place. Itachi, who rarely showed emotion, lost his composure, his face twisted with shock and disbelief. He muttered, "Susanoo, how is this possible?" Susanoo was the ocular technique of the Mangekyo Sharingan. In Itachi's understanding, only he and the man who had claimed to be Uchiha Madara should be able to use it in the current world. He couldn't imagine how someone posing as an Akatsuki member could activate Susanoo. Worse, his eyes narrowed. The Susanoo in the distance had instantly manifested in one of its strongest forms, the half-body armored Susanoo, right from the outset. That indicated the user's Dujutsu was extraordinarily potent. After a moment of stunned silence, Itachi's and Kakashi's gazes simultaneously shifted away from the battlefield and locked onto the figure on the rooftop. Who exactly is he? The question ran through both their minds. An Uchiha with a Mangekyo Sharingan capable of using Susanoo was standing behind that person without stepping forward. Itachi and Kakashi were suddenly intensely curious about the silent man watching the fight. Biwajuzo recovered enough to ask, "Itachi, those three masked ones, are they really part of our Akatsuki? They're fighting the one with the carved eyes, too." "It's possible," Itachi answered, uncertainty in his voice. "They might be other hidden members of the organization." They all looked on, the night's air still ringing with the echo of that impossible collision. Chapter 99, Raiders. Please subscribe. Thunder rolled as the brutal duel between a crimson Susanoo and an ice crystal bodhisattva tore through the little town. The combatants were titanic, every motion carried a stating force. In moments, the long street was a ruin. Shouts and alarms mixed with the rumble of collapsing buildings as residents fled, dragging their families to safety. Whoosh! Several figures pushed against the panicked crowd and landed beside Kakashi and his companions. Their leader was Asuma, recently returned to the village. He stared up at the two towering warriors locked in combat, disbelief written across his face. What's happening? Even with his experience as a former member of the Guardian Shinobi 12, the sight stunned him. Neither the 20-meter-tall ice crystal bodhisattva, wreathed in frost, nor the armored red half-body warrior were things he'd encountered in his career. Kurenai Yuhi glanced at him. "Why are you here?" Asuma shrugged. "I was nearby and saw the flare. Even without the signal, he and his team would have come. This battle could be seen for kilometers." Kakashi swept a solemn look over Asuma's squad. Of the four, aside from Asuma himself, the others were ordinary Chunin, no match for the vicious members of the Akatsuki. Asuma asked again, "What exactly is going on?" Kurenai told him, "We're investigating the ninja disappearances. The clues point to an organization called Akatsuki. We tracked them here and found Akatsuki members operating in the town." Asuma nodded. "Which of the two warring sides is Akatsuki?" Kurenai hesitated. "Both." Asuma's eyes widened. Aoba Yamashiro stepped forward and pointed to figures at the far end of the street. "That includes them. These three groups are all wearing Akatsuki attire." Uchiha Itachi. Asuma's expression hardened. Between the towering clash and the flung ice and frost, he had missed Itachi and Biwajuzo standing at the other end of the street at first. Aoba continued, "Next to Itachi is the hidden Mist S-rank rogue ninja, one of the former 7 ninja swordsmen of the Mist, Biwajuzo." Asuma's face went grave. One was a Kona S-rank wanted criminal responsible for the Uchiha Massacre. The other was a rogue S-rank from the Hidden Mist. Both alone were terrifying. With the two immense avatars locked in battle, and now these wanted criminals present, the Akatsuki looked far more dangerous than he'd imagined. Kakashi, what do we do? Kakashi only shook his head. Intervening in a fight on this scale was impossible. Even having witnessed the fight's outbreak, he was bewildered by the situation. Counting Itachi and Biwa, 6 Akatsuki members had gathered tonight, but they were not allied. Itachi and Biwa had chosen to stand off and watch. It seemed the group had split into factions. Has there been an internal conflict in Akatsuki, or is something else going on? Kakashi's gaze settled on Itachi. Perhaps only by reaching out to him could they untangle the mystery. Itachi, however, held as many secrets as the ninja beside him. He watched the clash between the red Susanoo and the ice crystal bodhisattva with a complicated expression, equal parts surprise and doubt. As everyone's attention was glued to the battlefield, a sudden blur cut across the scene. Someone darted forward at incredible speed toward the masked Akatsuki member standing silently on a rooftop, the apparent leader of the group. The attack came from nowhere. Even Itachi and Kakashi, vigilant as they were a heartbeat slow. The masked leader remained motionless as the attacker closed in, as if the strike didn't exist. Just when observers expected him to be hit, another masked Akatsuki member who had been standing behind the leader flashed out and met the attacker. The two collided with a dull impact and sprang apart. It took a moment for everyone to realize the attacker, like the white-haired youth who earlier called himself Duma, had characters carved into his eyes, his left and right pupils marked with the words Upper Moon and 6. The exchange showed the attacker had the upper hand. The masked member was forced back and landed bracing to dissipate the blow. The attacker leapt across the street, landing atop a rooftop, assuming a taijutsu stance. Upper Moon 6, Akaza, he announced. The masked leader on the roof glanced at Akaza with an indifferent look and offered no response. He simply stood there, calm as if controlling everything around him. Akaza bristled at the dismissal. He stomped, shattering the tile beneath his foot, and launched himself like an arrow. Destructive kill, chaotic style. Almost at once, the masked Akatsuki who had met him formed hand seals. Ice release, demonic mirror ice crystals. On the already ice-strewn street, mirrors of frost manifested and expanded into a crystal barrier enclosing Akaza. He was boxed in by shining ice panes. Then the Akatsuki ninja who had used ice release walked toward the mirror and, shockingly, merged into it. Another ice release ninja! Aoba clicked his tongue in astonishment. Asuma and Kurenai exchanged grave looks. Kakashi's expression darkened further. Across the street, Biwa Juzo muttered in frustration, "Damn it, where did all these people come from?" First chapter posted. Please give recommendation and monthly votes. Chapter 100, Woman? A long street lay shrouded in frost and mist, and 2 savage battles were raging there at once. On one side, 2 colossal figures clashed in titanic combat. On the other, a vast dome of ice, formed from countless shimmering mirrors, loomed inverted over the road. The 2 fights were utterly different in style, but equally terrifying. Most of the town's residents had been evacuated. The only people left nearby were Konoha Shinobi, Kakashi, Asuma, Kurenai, Aoba, and 2 true Akatsuki members, Itachi and Biwa Juzo. The thunderous impact of the enormous being's blows made the ground quake and rattled eardrums. Even simple taijutsu from such gargantuan forms sent shockwaves through the street. From his vantage point, Itachi watched and noticed something peculiar. The Akatsuki member inside the red Susanoo was clearly trying to keep the battle contained, dragging the expanding ice crystal bodhisattva back toward the street whenever it tried to spread its destruction. The white-haired young man controlling the ice construct, Duma, showed no such restraint. He brandished 2 golden fans and attacked wantonly, smiling with arrogant contempt. Still, the ice crystal bodhisattva's assaults failed to harm the red Susanoo. They couldn't reach the Akatsuki inside. The Susanoo could crack and shatter the ice colossus, leaving it pitted and fragmented, but could not destroy it outright. Duma leaped onto the bodhisattva's shoulder and taunted. "In this cold, how long do you think their lungs will hold out? That armor of yours can't block freezing air forever." The Akatsuki shinobi behind the Susanoo seemed startled by the taunt, as if only now realizing the danger. She inhaled the piercing cold, and found with surprise that she felt no real ill effect. The Susanoo's attacks continued. Duma's smile faltered. He knew precisely why his blood demon art was so potent, the chakra he had amassed over time. Yet he also knew his limits. Even as an upper moon, he could not create chakra for himself. He gained it only by devouring the living of the ninja world. As the battle consumed him, his reserves dwindled. If this biting cold couldn't cripple his opponent's lungs, his chances of victory looked slim. His gaze flicked to a rooftop not far away. A single figure had stood there silently from the start, unmoved by either fight. That presence made Duma uneasy. He felt it was the heart of the problem. The Akatsuki member in the Susanoo glanced up as well, and when she met the Watcher's eyes, fear and guilt flickered across them. Duma watched, puzzled. A powerful one like that, afraid of the Akatsuki leader, or ashamed he cannot handle me? He sneered inwardly, insulted by the idea that someone might tremble before him. The rooftop figure seemed to sense the attention and slowly turned. The Akatsuki member inside the Susanoo visibly went pale. With determination, she pressed her hands together and cried out. The voice that answered from the rooftop was clear and unmistakably female. Duma's expression changed to surprise. A woman, he spat. He had not expected the force pushing him this hard to be led by a woman. Almost instantly, the Susanoo, previously fighting bare-handed, manifested a long red spear in its grasp. With a roar, it lunged. The spear drove straight through the ice crystal bodhisattva. Ice splintered and massive chunks fell away. The 20-meter colossus, crisscrossed with fractures, could not remain standing once impaled. It collapsed into the mist, its fragments raining down and thickening the cold air until visibility was nearly zero. Kakashi signaled for a full retreat. Itachi, Biwa, Asuma, Kurenai, and Aoba all leapt back to safer positions, landing on distant roofs and buildings. Even the trained ninja crows could only circle far above the battlefield, their cries lost in the gale. As they fell back, the silent figure on the rooftop vanished. Itachi was the first to notice. His Sharingan flared as he scoured the powder-white haze, but the blizzard-like cold and the dense mist hid the Watcher's trace for the moment. "Where did they go?" Asuma muttered, unsettled. "The cold is too thick. Can't see a thing," Aoba replied. Kurenai tensed, fingers on a kunai. Kakashi's intuition told him that the person suspected to be the Akatsuki leader had made a move. Then a sound cut through the frozen air, a heart-wrenching wail from somewhere within the mist. Even from their distance, it made hearts freeze. Asuma swallowed hard. Aoba and Kurenai tightened their grips. All four of the shinobi facing the battlefield were at elite Jonin level or higher, yet the arrival of the suspected leader and that agonized scream unsettled them. Itachi's expression grew grave. When Biwa asked quietly, "What's wrong?" Itachi only shook his head and said nothing. He had sensed something far more dangerous within the cold, the black flame of Amaterasu burning somewhere in the mist. The scream echoed again, jagged and pained, and the men and women watching could feel the air thrum with a new, terrible presence.